I met Ken when I interviewed him to be a part-time academic advisor in what was then a part of University Extension, academic support for adult students. And that would have been in January or February of 1987.
Back in the late 1980s, Ken was in charge of advising for evening and weekend students in Frazee Hall.
I knew Ken as an advisor in undergraduate studies and it was originally central advising.
My first encounter with Ken was when I interviewed for my first position here at UK in 1993.
He was a big influence on getting advising and advisors out there at the university level and making it something that was important and making it something that was valued.
He was on the ground level of the foundation for advising as we know it today.
Here's some things that I remember about Ken. His always, of course, his ultimate professionalism, how much he cared for students, and his particular area of expertise being the non-traditional student, although he cared for every single one.
He wanted to help students no matter where they were coming from or where they wanted to go. He just wanted to give them whatever he could to help them, and usually it was instilling confidence in them, especially the non-traditional students, giving them confidence about coming back to school, and as well as treating everybody fairly, to our advising staff and to the students, and just really had a knack for that.
He was gracious and patient, and he was student-centered before anybody thought to label it, because his goal was always, how do we best help the student accomplish what they want and maintain the integrity of what we're doing?
He was so just quirky, so delightful is the only word I can think of. And he was obviously very thoughtful and sharp and perfectly capable of doing the job, but brought all these wonderful personality traits that I thought the adult students would really relate to.
My overall memory being his dedication, his kindness, and his professionalism all day, every day, from the time he walked in until the time we left.
He was so kind, and he was as kind to students as he was to staff, so you never worried when you had to send a student to talk to him that the student would be mistreated or ignored or blown off, because they wouldn't be. He just was very genteel and gracious with them and helpful. His follow-through with us as advisors, his reports back were always accurate, and he just kept things together and kept things moving.
He was a mentor for me and for others, and it made the world of difference for me and my career.
He was kind, he was quiet, and he was solid. And he just brings a smile to my face.
Yeah, mine too.
He was calm and quiet, but when he had something to say or a joke to crack, I'm telling you, he just would nail it.
Here's a couple funny memories I have of Ken, because he had a marvelous sense of humor and a very dry wit, and you never knew when it was coming. One time, when Ken went on vacation to Florida, to Disneyland, Disney World, he purchased a temporary nose ring, and he donned this nose ring his first day back to campus after his vacation, and he came into our office, and the first person he encountered was our administrative assistant. And when she saw him walk in with that nose ring, I thought we were going to have to scrape her up off the floor.
I took up money one time for something, and it turned out I had too much money, and I was going to reimburse people who had paid in. And he came to me in all seriousness and said, I didn't get a reimbursement. And I said, but Ken, you didn't donate. And he said, I didn't get a reimbursement. And he was just so serious looking at me with those big old eyes, brown eyes. And I was thinking, well, what is this guy thinking? You know, I just had him in my office for 3 or 4 months, but he was teasing me.
And he was also very kind and patient, and you could ask him the same question 4 days in a row and not get yelled at.
Mm-hmm. he's just gracious and humble. You know, he was very unassuming. He was just direct. I thought he was a wonderful advisor and that he had those qualities, that he had empathy, but he was also honest with students.
Ken became an expert on a lot of things. And so he was our go-to for a lot of information about requirements, especially as requirements were changing. We moved to the general studies requirements, and that was different. And then we moved to UK core, and he kept up with everything and kept us all in line. At least he kept me in line.
If you ever had a question about a requirement that was related to USP or general studies, then you called Ken. And Ken was the one who sorted it out and said, yeah, I think this might work. This was before we had the exceptions committee. Ken was our exceptions committee back in the day.
And so Ken was going to lunch wherever he was going to lunch, and somewhere along that unusual path, he found a very small kitten hunkered down in the weeds. It was a malnourished, sad little kitten. And Ken took that kitten and he brought it back to our offices, and he sat all afternoon advising students with that sad little kitten in his lap. And he took that kitten home. I don't know what his wife at that time, Marcia, thought about it, but he took that kitten home, and I saw that kitten later, and it was a fine feline. It was a fine representative of the cat family.
Any funny personal stories?
Yes, but I'm not sure I can say them on tape, so I'm going to, people can ask me later about a couple of funny things.
Okay.
When I think of Ken, I think of just a genuinely nice person who always made time for everybody, no matter how busy he might have been. He was always kind when he worked with people. He was solid, he knew his stuff, and he was just a great resource for the university when he was here.
He was actually the brainchild behind launching the advising network along with Kate Johnson.
I went to a national NACADA conference in Kansas City in '86, and the University of Tennessee did a presentation about a campus-wide advising service. And I went to that, and Ken wasn't working with us then. And it was so interesting because it was kind of what I envisioned happening at UK. Then together we went to the University of Louisville because they held a regional NACADA meeting, and University of Louisville had started something of an advising center. And so we went to their presentation, and that was interesting. And we both came out of there saying, wow, we want to do ours differently, but we will do it. And the key thing we came out of there was we're not going to exclude anyone, because Louisville had very explicitly said only professional advisors, no faculty. We were willing to take anybody who would join and help us out.
Ken and Kate brought NACADA to the University of Kentucky campus. They are the ones who brought the message and encouraged us to become members of NACADA.
Ken was right there, you know, a charter member, a charter leader for what was then referred to as the advising network from the get-go. It was conceived that way.
And also it was just Ken's nature, particularly inclusive. Why would you close anyone out? I mean, and I think that was a very good thing to have done from the beginning.
We all worked together, not in an official capacity, but in an unofficial capacity as the advising network. And I worked with Ken and many others on campus with our first activities, like the information day that we set up outside of Whitehall Classroom Building in the fall.
Gave away pizza.
Gave away pizza. And we were all out there talking about our different majors and our different colleges.
Ken really took over. Ken developed the whole thing. He kept it going. He coordinated the whole thing.
He and others believed that, for one, we needed a conduit for better communication, but also for visibility of advising.
There would be no advising network if Ken hadn't decided that was really a thing that was important to him, and he was willing to devote the time and energy. Plus, he had the personality to keep people coming.
I can tell you that when I received it, it was such an honor to me because of knowing Ken and knowing what he represented for advising, because he really was a pillar on campus. He wasn't 6'6", but he was a pillar.
He was 5'6".
I think he was 5'6". He was a pillar on campus for advising. People knew his name. They recognized him for all of the good things that we've talked about.
I have not received the award yet, but I have been on the selection committee and I have worked with folks in selecting the recipients of the award. I feel that it's a very high honor to receive this award, and those of us who knew Ken, it's a very sentimental honor as well. And if he were here today, I know that he would be very proud and very humbled to know that this award was named after him.
When the award was named for him, I thought, there's nobody else that could ever have it.
Ken would just be deeply touched first that there is a Ken Freedman Advising Award. And I know he'd be touched that you all still have him in mind and that it's developed into what it's developed. And he'd be really honored that you're going to do a whole day to help remember and honor him.
His dedication, his professionalism, his kindness, and his courage were an inspiration to all of us.
But he was doing what he loved, and that's why I think he continued working as long as he possibly could.
It was toward the end of Ken's life when he was quite ill, and he would have Marcia, his wife, bring him as close to Miller Hall in their car as she could get him. And then he would walk from that place up to the stairs to Miller Hall, and he would stop and he would rest. And then he would walk up the stairs and into the building, and he would stop and he would rest. And then he would walk from that front door back to his office, and he would go in and he would close the shades. And I understand that he had a cot or a comfortable chair where he could relax there. And he would stop and he would rest. And then he would get up, he would open the shades, and he was in business for the rest of the day.
I dearly loved him.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, I'm going to cry.
Oh. So what does the Ken Freedman Award mean? What does it say about a person? This is an off the
No, I'm
wall.
always bridesmaid. Okay. Cut that out. Okay? I get nominated a lot. Yeah.